Prabhupada says, impersonalists who perform Vedic fruitive sacrifices are attached to the various fire gods and offer oblations in their name. The 49 fire gods are described herewith. Agnishvata Barhishada Somyaha Pitara Ajapaha Sagnayo Nagnayastesham Patni Daksha Yani Swadha. The Agnishvatas, the Barhishadas, the Somyas, and the Ajapas are the Pitas. They are either Sagnika or Niragnika. The wife of all these Pitas is Swadha, who is the daughter of King Daksha. Tebyo dadhara kanye dwe vayunam dharinim Swadha ubhete brahmavadinyao jnana vinyana paraje. Swadha, who was offered to the Pitas, begot two daughters named Vayuna and Dharani. Both of whom were impersonalists and were expert in transcendental and Vedic knowledge. Bhavasya patni tu sati, bhavam devam anuvrata atmanaha sadrasham putram nelebhe gunashi lataha. The 16th daughter, whose name was Sati, was the wife of Lord Shiva. She could not produce a child, although she always faithfully engaged in the service of her husband. In the last verse of the chapter, Pitara Pratirupe Swe Bhavayana Gase Rusha, a proud Daivatmanatmanam Ajahad Yoga Sangyuta. The reason is that Sati's father Daksha used to rebuke Lord Shiva in spite of Shiva's faultlessness. Consequently, before attaining a mature age, Sati gave up her body by dint of yogic mystic power. Lord Shiva, purport by Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Lord Shiva, being the head of all mystic yogis, never even constructed a home for his residence. Sati was the daughter of a great king, Daksha, and because of his youngest daughter, Sati selected as her husband Lord Shiva. King Daksha was not very much satisfied with her. Therefore, whenever she met her father, he unnecessarily criticized her husband, although Lord Shiva was faultless. Because of this, before attaining a mature age, Sati gave up the body given by her father Daksha, and therefore she could not produce a child. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 1st chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Genealogical Table of the Daughters of Manu. Om Riyana Timarandasya Nanjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master kindly forced open my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I therefore offer my humble obeisances to such a spiritual master. Translation again. We'll do this last one again. The reason is that Sati's father, Daksha, used to rebuke Lord Shiva in spite of Shiva's faultlessness. Consequently, before attaining a mature age, Sati gave up her body by dint of yogic mystic power. This is the beginning of the 4th canto opens here when Vidura has jetted out of Indraprastha on one of his episodes where he got tired of dealing with Dhritarashtra's lack of listening, and he just heads off, and he encounters Maitreya, and there's a lot of conversation between Vidura and Maitreya in the Bhagavatam, and two great souls, and Vidura is inquiring, how is it even possible that all this could go on with Daksha and Lord Shiva and Sati? Why would she give up her body? And etc. Vidura is he's bewildered by all of it. So this is all happening in the middle of this. Daksha is one of the Prajapatis, right? So he's performing all these sacrifices with all of his sons. and all the other Prajapatis, and they're Prabhupada, describes what's human life meant for? Sacrifice, austerity, and so they're performing all these big time sacrifices as the best way to please Krishna, and so Daksha is doing this. It's a 1,000-year sacrifice. It's got some kind of he does all kinds of sacrifices, Daksha, and they've got specific names. So they're in the middle of this 1,000-year sacrifice, and Daksha, he's not happy with his youngest daughter's choice of husband, Lord Shiva. He's not gonna see any opulences from Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva's not Kuvera, right? His daughter didn't marry the wealthy guy. His daughter married the guy who doesn't even have a house, right? He doesn't have a house, and where does he live? Where does he sleep? Under a tree, Lord Shiva. And he's got natty hair and whatever, and he's got all these horrible hangers on. So it happens actually. I know in my life, I have some friends who, let's just say, are a little non-standard, and my parents were always very tolerant of them, but my wife really didn't like some of my friends, and I can't blame her. They're really non-standard kind of people, and people who just don't follow the normal path at all. And I had one friend. He's had Hare Krishna food all over the world. He wasn't interested in the world, so to speak, and he just started traveling. He went all around the world. He used to love to have the Hare Krishna food everywhere. And in fact, every time I talk to him and we bring up Hare Krishna, he just starts glorifying the food. He's had Hare Krishna food all over the world. But he traveled just everywhere. He would land in a country with no money. He'd land in a country with like $20. He landed in Brazil once, got off the plane. This was when you could do that. Now they make you show that you got money and everything else. This was 20 years ago. And he would land in Brazil with no money, $20. And then he would just hitchhike from the airport out to the mountains where he liked to be. And he would find a cave and he would live in it. And in order to survive, he would give tours of his mountain area to tourists and make enough money to eat. And he would eat jungle fruits and whatever. This is a really good friend of mine. He and I met in Australia, actually, when we were like 19 years old. We were both riding motorcycles around Australia. And so, I mean, he didn't do drugs or have dreadlocks. He wasn't a hippie, but he was like a wacko yogi, live in the cave, right? And anyway, he always used to drive my wife crazy. So Lord Shiva's got all these crazy friends, and Daksha doesn't like him. He doesn't invite him to the sacrifice, right? This is a 1,000-year sacrifice, and all the demigods are coming. They're all participating in the offerings of the sacrifice, and it's all of Sati's relatives are there, right? And she wants to see them. It's the big event, right, for the next 1,000 years. It's such a yuga. And so Sati really wants to go, but Daksha hasn't invited Lord Shiva. He's not on the invitation list. So Lord Shiva's like, whatever, you're not going. He didn't invite us. You can't go. You could show, and she says, when she starts coming up with all kinds of reasons why she wants to go. She doesn't want to be left out of the picture. It's bad enough she's got to hang out with all these weird Shiva followers, the ghosts and all these other weird entities. But she can't even go to the party, right? And see all of her relatives and everything. So she starts coming up with all kinds of reasons why she should go. And Lord Shiva he just says, he knows it's going to be a disaster whether she stays or goes. And he says, according to Prabhupada, And so he just says no, and he explains to her counter argument that you can show up. She says you can show up unannounced at your relatives, right? That's what relatives are for. What are relatives for if you can't just show up there unannounced, right? Which is true, especially in Kali Yuga. And Lord Shiva says, well, okay, yes, you can show up to your relatives or your close friends unannounced if they're not going to use angry words against you, right? That's what he says. This is all in the next chapter. And so Lord Shiva tries to give her all kinds, and he says Daksha's not playing with a full deck. Your father, he's going to be angry. Don't go. It's not going to end well. And she says, anyway, she goes, right? And then there's all this fantastic cursing and counter cursing. The followers of Daksha and first Daksha just starts insulting Lord Shiva when he shows up, right? He calls him the monkey-eyed the monkey-eyed demigod with all of his nutty monkey-like followers. And however, I guess the one thing I'll say about this, and then there's counter curses from led by Nandishwara. We have a friend, Nandishwara Prabhu. He's one of the chief followers of Lord Shiva, and he counter curses Daksha. And the curses of the Brahmanas are called Duratyaya, difficult to overcome, very difficult. And same word that's used in, is it 7:16? Daiviyesha Gunamayi, and that's the same verse. And Duratyaya is where this divine material energy of mine is difficult to overcome. But for one engaged in devotional service, it's no problem. And Lord Shiva explains, after all this cursing and counter-cursing goes on, Prabhupada indicates that Lord Shiva is not really bothered because he recognizes that all curses are just material. One way, whether you're benedicted for material benedictions or you're cursed, they're the same because it's all just material. And we take even anything in this material world, even the inauspicious, as blessings, because if you're a follower of Krishna, then Krishna is arranging for your benefit even the negative material things. So there's the other funny thing about this is that despite these curses and counter curses, and both Daksha and Shiva then leave after they get cursed, right? What happens to Daksha? He gets cursed to have what? Remember? He gets the head of a goat. Is it his teeth that get knocked out? Is that somebody else? Yeah, because Brigu does one of the counter curses also. Anyway, he gets cursed to have the head of a goat, Daksha. Anyway, and he does. He ends up with the head of a goat. Anyway, so the funny thing is that after Daksha and Shiva leave, after this total melodrama fiasco of cursing and counter-cursing in the middle of this sacrifice, the Brahmanas go on for the rest of the 1,000 years and they still do the rest of the sacrifice. Because that's just what people do. It's like, we do it too. People have altercations, they have a big melodrama at the ashram between the wife and the husband, or between the Prabhu and the other Prabhu and the Brahmachari ashram or whatever, the managers and the followers. And then still everybody has to just go the husband's got to go to work, the wife keeps cooking, right? The brahmacharis keep going out on books or cooking, whatever. You've got to keep doing your sacrifice. So that's always going on. I just thought that was funny that they go on for another, despite the fact that Daksha, who's arranged the whole sacrifice, has to leave with his goat head, they still do the 1,000-year sacrifice. But I guess the one thing I was going to point out is that we know that Lord Shiva is who? I mean, he's in the mode of anger and all that, and he's the lord of all these ghosts and everything, but who else is he? He's not only the lord of the ghosts, who else is he? He's the topmost devotee, Vaishnava, right? He's just serving Krishna. So, and Daksha wants better for his last daughter, his youngest daughter, than somebody who hangs out with the hippie nut jobs and the ghosts and, and lives under a tree. And anyway, but I take this whole conversation between Maitreya and Vidura. For instance, Lord Shiva, he does counter, and his followers counter curse back with Daksha, but Lord Shiva, he's not really bothered himself. He doesn't Daksha back himself. It's the Brahmanas who are Lord Shiva's followers, who Nandishwara, who counter curses back to him. Whereas Lord Shiva, he's just taking everything as he warned his wife, let's not go, Daksha doesn't have the right attitude. But Lord Shiva, there's a whole, in the next chapter, there's all this explanation and going through each and every curse. And this happens multiple times in the Bhagavatam where somebody is saying insults and then the acharyas provide that really those insults are glorifications of either the great devotee or of Krishna, right? So even though somebody's trying to insult Krishna or trying to insult Krishna's devotee, in this case, Lord Shiva, topmost Vaishnava, the insults actually come out as glorifications. And they go all the way through each curse. They show that that's actually a glorification of Lord Shiva. And and Lord Shiva himself, he's just not bothered by Daksha's curses. And the idea is that there are all different kinds of devotees, right? And there's always going to be devotees that are ahead of you, ahead of me, and there are always going to be devotees that you're ahead of, right? And so, always. You're always going to be far ahead of some devotees are always going to be far ahead of you. And maybe, you're doing a service and you had these nectar devotees who were doing the service with you, and then you get all these like ultra rascally devotees who show up to do the service with you, right? Or you want for some friend of yours to have the best association, right, etc. But it's a little dangerous to warn people off about other people. You don't want their association, this, that. I mean, to some degree that's important very early, especially if somebody's had a really damaged life, they've really damaged themselves, they really need or they've got really bad addictions or whatever, then they need a hard break or if they've had big time addictions in the past, then you kind of just, there's some places you just can't go. And, if you want to help a devotee, you got to tell them, you got to find new friends, or whatever. But for the most part, after a while, once you've been around, you're living in the ashram, you're living in the temple, there are devotees who, they're serving Krishna. Krishna's in charge of their life. I mean, we don't know. Everybody has to get purified, right? No matter what happens, everybody has to get purified. And in this material world, Krishna doesn't appear directly himself. He appears as? As who? His representatives, yes. As the spiritual master is representative. That's the spiritual master sort of form of the guru. There's 3 forms of the guru, right? It's the spiritual master, representative, The deity is the frozen form of the guru, and then the holy name in Kali Yuga, right? So, but otherwise, Krishna, but you're only getting feedback from Paramatma with chanting of the holy name, and the deities aren't going to get down off the altar and come with you through your day and, you know, tell you what to say and not to say, right? So Krishna operates in Kali Yuga through his devotees, right? So, and Krishna wants to help us. Krishna's a supreme friend. Krishna's got a lot of friendly helpers to come and purify us, right? So we get all kinds of people coming into our life. And so there are devotees who just have the surface of causing trouble, right? Or even encouraging other people to cause trouble, right? Like kind of Lord Shiva. You know, he's looking after all the people who cause trouble, right? As one of his services for Krishna. Because all those people who cause trouble are also serving Krishna. What is it? Gorkishore Das Babaji said, you know, he says, why should I worry about all these? Why should I take disciples? Why should I worry about all these jivas, souls out here? They're all already serving Krishna. I'm not worried about them. They're already serving Krishna. They're all Krishna's servants. That's a very high stage of realization. Because everybody is serving Krishna, one way or the other. And so, like Devamrita Swami always warns, if a devotee offends you, that's okay, right? It might not be very good for them, but the one thing that you don't want to do is retaliate. Because, like Lord Shiva sets the example, if we retaliate, it's a hard one. I like giving this class, actually, because, especially when we have high expectations that these are devotees, they should be acting in a particular way. I mean, we don't know. Karma is so unbelievably complicated. And Prabhupada explains, Sarva Dharman Parityaja doesn't mean that Krishna, that you have all your karma is completely eliminated. It just means that Krishna himself gets involved in your karma, and he himself gives you exactly what he wants you to have to shape all the outcomes. It's not like magically you become a devotee and there's no more reactions, for previous trillions of lifetimes of karma. Karma is so fantastically complicated. So we don't know. We don't know why someone may be offending us because, Krishna wants it to be that way, wants it to have that outcome for us, right? For whatever reason. Because we're so stubborn in some other area that we might not even realize until 10 years later why somebody acted like that. Right? And then 10 years later, you have the realization, man, I deserve that, right? You realize what it was about, one way or another, these deep, subtle, hard parts of the heart. And Krishna just used some devotee to hammer, to chisel on it. I used to say this prayer before I became a devotee. I was doing Raja Yoga, silent meditation. And I used to say this prayer, Lord, please chisel down my life according to your design. That's a hard prayer to make, boy, because, Krishna's got the hammer chiseling on you, Anyway, so we don't want to react. We don't want to retaliate. Be like Lord Shiva. Daksha does all kinds of things. The other devotees will come to your defense if necessary. That's also here, right? It's the other devotees who are cursing and counter-cursing, The battles may need to play out to one degree or another. If you're in management, there'll be battling. Management means battle. Management means kshatriya. It doesn't mean we'll let whatever happen, right? You guys in management, if you just you don't bother checking the oil in the van, you don't bother keeping up with the the permits for the cooking and whatever else, or dealing nicely with the university. What happened to your service, right? So you have to do battle with the world. If you're in management, management means battle. So anyway, so things will go on. They always do, but they'll still be, no matter who gets, upset or struggles to find the language to communicate what needs to be communicated. It still needs to be communicated. Things need to be communicated. Things have to go on. The sacrifice is going to go on for 1,000 years, one way or the other, right? Brahmachari ashram going to go on. In the Grihastha ashram, the kids got 20 years. You got to raise them, right? So it's a great line. Ramachandra was given class here one day. Or no, he wasn't given class. Anyway, I better not talk about Ramachandra just in case he's watching. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Never mind. Okay. Anyway, that's the idea. Let's not retaliate. Krishna's acting through his devotees. We're getting purified, right? And we don't want, maybe, it's not that we get to look down. See, like Daksha's, his mistake, I mean, as much as whatever. We're not here to judge Daksha, but just rhetorically speaking, hypothetically, for rhetorical purposes, his mistake was looking at Lord Shiva as what kind of a Vaishnav has the service of being the Lord, the king of all these nut jobs and ghosts and goblins and all these people. What kind of a Vaishnav is this guy? Look at his associates, right? He's got to be, I don't want him in my life. I don't even want him coming to my sacrifice, much less marrying my daughter, right? And this is a troubling way to think, actually. I know devotees who've come to lots of service in the temple. And I sit out on Queen Street, and one of them, every once in a while, he comes by, and sometimes he's intoxicated, right? But I've known him for 12, 13 years here at the temple. He comes around sometimes, does nice service. Sometimes I see him on Queen Street, he's intoxicated, and he comes up and he's like, "Let me have some books, I'm going to distribute them." I'm going to say, "Okay." I say, "Okay." And he goes off, and I guess he's got the intoxication fearlessness, and he distributes the books, right? He's just doing devotional service in mode of ignorance, right? So, and that's Lord Shiva. He's looking after all the people in the mode of ignorance, right? So we don't know. There's plenty of people, we might not want their service for ourselves. This was my point. Like, you can look at another person and say, "I don't want that person's service." But we're not really entitled to think that we're better than them, because we're not better than them. They're doing service for Krishna, right? All service to Krishna is perfect. There's perfect, more perfect, and most perfect, right? But it's still perfect. So we're not better than another devotee just because, they're doing whatever, getting intoxicated now and again, right? I mean, if you've become so fortunate to encounter the lotus feet of Krishna, to encounter Prabhupada's books, to meet the great souls that are distributing transcendental knowledge on behalf of Srila Prabhupada in this time in the countries of the world. People have the bodies and the minds that they have, right? We all do. We all have a lot of troubles with our bodies and minds. So to say, I want nothing to do with that Prabhu, I mean, these people, they come to the book table sometimes, they're drunk, right? And I'm tempted to be like, "Look, you can't be at my table drunk," right? Say something like that. But anyway, I've learned, because a lot of the homeless people come up to the table too, because it's like a magnet, I can't just pick my stuff up and walk away, right? I'm there to be there. They want to come. I just have to deal with whoever Krishna sends me, right? You guys do the book table, you know how that is? Whoever comes, they come. You set it up there, Anyway, what are you going to do? Call the police on a devotee just because they got some kind of intoxicated, oriented body and mind, right? They're still serving Krishna and want to serve Krishna. It's a real subtle opportunity to put wisdom to the test, yeah? Because real wisdom is personalism, right? Not impersonalism. Prabhupada's taking little digs here at a few of these, part of the genealogical table of the daughters of Manu. He's describing these sons of, as impersonalists, perfect in transcendental impersonalism. But in personalism, it's a whole other order of magnitude of displaying wisdom. Sometimes we have to display wisdom with people whose service we do not want. I don't want your service, Prabhu. That's okay. You're perfectly entitled to not want to have somebody else's service, right? You're perfectly entitled to not want to deal with somebody else's service. And some people got the service of offending the devotees, right? Or acting crazy with their body and mind or one way or the other. But they're still, if they've encountered Krishna, and really, it's true, if you're at a very high level, you see everyone this way. I mean, I'll never forget, this one homeless guy kept coming up to the table, and he smells kind of bad, and he always wanted to talk to me, and he always wanted to hang around for a long time. And I learned that every time I tried to blow these people off, something really bad would happen to me. Like if I try and send them away at the book table, bad things would then happen. And I kind of took that as a message, and I said, all right, I have to just make friends with these people that are coming to the table, both men and women. And a lot of them have mental problems, but they want to come up and talk, right? And first of all, there's Prabhupada's there. Anyway, they come up, they talk to me, and I figured out that if I just give something to them, or I agree with whatever they say, then they become my friends. And then sometimes they give me really interesting pieces of information because I don't really watch the news anymore. They start telling me about what's going on in the world or this or that. And they literally became my friends. One guy, and then this went on for 6 months. One guy, I finally find out, and he just kept wanting to come back. His name is Sean O'Dwyer. And some of the devotees know him. I come to find out he's one of the original devotees here on the farm who helped found the farm 40 years ago. One of the very, very, very first people who ever lived here and came here. Now he lives on the street, on Queen Street. But he's a devotee. What service did he do for Radha Giridhari for 40 years? 40 years ago. And still talking about Krishna. I realized I started to have an inkling something was up with him because he was really super keen to come every other Friday night for the prasad on Queen Street. And then I started to pay attention, he's really attracted to the prasad, and not just in an ordinary way, because he really glorify the prasad, and I realized he had such a facility with, saying Krishna, this, that, and because at first I was just trying to get him to take the books like he'd never seen any of this before, right? And he always kind of, he was hanging around in this kind of way that I really felt fortunate later that I had actually had this realization that I should just be friends with these people. Because then I come to find out, here's this really senior devotee, right? Way more senior than me. He'd been around 40 years, right? Thinking about Krishna for 40 years. How long have I been thinking about Krishna? 13, 14, 15, right? Anyway. And so you never know who you're going to encounter. And we don't know who some of these people were in their previous lives, right? Or even what they're going to do in the future of their life. We just don't know. So as Devanamrita Swami says, I can't manufacture his sobriety, but very soberly says, devotees may offend you. You don't want their service of offending the devotees, purifying the devotees. Somebody's got to be the rascal and make the offenses, right? I mean, that's the definition. There have to be neophyte devotees. Definition of a neophyte devotee is they cause disturbance, isn't it? I mean, somebody's got to purify and allow the wisdom to be displayed. How are you going to have glorification of the wise people unless there's various disturbances going on that they can rise above, right? How you get any real glorification has to be real, or it's not really glorification. That means there have to be some challenges to be overcome, that are real, right? It's not like, oh, there's a pure devotee, therefore, he's glorified just 'cause. No, they're glorified because they're overcoming challenges with actual wisdom and grace, right? Really, in the real crucible of the thing. And then they're glorified. The glorification is so much sweeter when it's real. It's not just sort of automatic, right? So, so somebody has to cause the disturbance. That's their service, right? And we can get some training in tolerance and also having a long perspective. The sacrifice is going to go on for 1,000 years after all this disturbance with Daksha and Shiva and Nandishvara and Brigu, right? So let's realize that it's perfectly fine to say, I don't want that service that person has, but they're serving Krishna, and whatever they're doing, if I'm the one they're offending, if they're offending someone else, then we have to come to the defense of the devotees. You don't let devotees be offended or attacked or whatever. But if you're directly the object of the attack, then we can't retaliate, right? We have to just be thankful. Thank you. That was very good for my spiritual life, Prabhu. I appreciate that. And then let the other devotees deal with the person who's attacking you. Because you don't know, that person's a devotee of Krishna. And especially if you don't know anything about them, right? We should really, first thought we should have as devotees, if somebody out of the blue comes up and just starts attacking us and we don't even know anything about them, we should instantly assume they're far higher than us and we don't know what their story is, right? Because they may not look like a devotee, but like my friend Sean O'Dwyer, he and I are good friends now. And I'm fortunate, I feel happier about our friendship because I was fortunate enough to make friends with him before I found out he was a much more senior devotee to me and was one of the people who pioneered New Varshan. Now I live here, right? I didn't have to make any sacrifices to come here and enjoy. I live here, I just enjoy. I come here and dance in ecstasy, Mangalarti. I didn't do anything. I didn't have to offend anybody. I didn't have to make any mistakes. I didn't have to hack the hard frozen ground of pioneering and pull the stumps out or any of the things that people had to do here. I didn't have to do any of that. Nobody spit on me. Nobody's ever come to me on Queen Street and spit on me like they used to do the devotees 40 years ago, right? Or try and beat you up. None of those. I just came here and I'm enjoying the feasting and then every day is a festival and the chanting Hare Krishna. What am I doing? I'm just enjoying. So anyway, we don't know. You don't know what service anyone might have done in their not even in their previous lifetimes, but in their service to Krishna in this lifetime. They may have done far more than we have. So, okay. Any comments or questions? Granth Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.